Okay, look. Characters called gratuitous nudity and
Heroin.
It's safe bets like this that prevents us decides to bring back spoof movies always there with the moral lessons and butter and cut through butter like, well, meat. And that say millennial parents do and how Bluey tackles it. Creativity. Something millennial parents do is provide their kids with the space to be creative. Bluey celebrates this with its emphasis on the importance of play. Unlike other shows of its kind, when the imagination play happens, they're not taken to some fantasy world. It's almost always kept grounded in reality. So you can see how the parents really play with the kids. Play and make-believe games not only encourages creativity, but it's academically proven to be hugely important to a child's development, such as emotional intelligence and language skills. A far cry from play being discouraged in favor of hard labor. But it can be hard for a parent to pull themselves away from housework and job work just to dedicate time for play. Bandit regularly struggles to work before being roped into a game, but even if he despairs over the choice of game, he still does it.
Oh, not hospital.
No way. I am not playing tickle crabs.
Oh, not dance mode.
While millennial fathers and mothers are more capable of dividing the workload of job, life, and kids more equally, father play tends to be more physical, boisterous, and rough and tumble, such as...
It was kind of scary, but it's over now. While the creatures in the ride follow Garfield's nightmare with a direct tie to the Garfield nightmare, I hope there is lasagna. The Old Mill at Kennywood is the world's oldest operating Old Mill attraction, and this is not by coincidence. Kennywood is a historic park whose employees and visitors care deeply for its history. While Garfield's Nightmare was not necessarily a beloved attraction, the retheme played an important part in extending the life of this historic ride. While some might remember Garfield's Nightmare for its neon paint and surreal visuals, like any Old Mill retheme, most Kennywood guests will remember the attraction for something else. While most of the emails I received detailed explicit and often disgusting acts of passion that took place on the Old Mill, my takeaway was not that the ride should be burned to the ground for the good of the general public. In fact, it was quite the opposite. The romantic activities that happened within the walls of the Old Mill, as humorous and crass as they could be, reminded me of something that I've always believed. Theme and amusement parks are special environments, where some of our strongest memories are formed, whether that's thrill, imagination, or even love. Hearing people of many different generations share how this one ride impacted them was surprisingly moving. To hear stories of young angst, the nerves of going on the ride with someone you had a crush on, the scariness of having your first kiss, and even missed opportunities, lost loves. For one rider who grew up in a small town, the dark tunnels of the attraction were the first place he felt safe kissing his boyfriend. For a married couple, a trip on the Old Mill made them laugh and feel like they were in high school again. When the messages weren't overtly erotic, they were actually beautiful, and a good reminder of why I love talking about these parks. They are memorable and exciting places where it's as much about riding the attractions as it is who you are riding with. And sometimes the most memorable experience one can have is where big bands could play and people could dance. The stint at the radio station would not last. He signed with Meyer to build a small roller coaster for the park and unique. As often as he could, he added figures of cartoon animals near or in his rides. In 1946, he added a miniature steam train ride that circled the park and even passed by a small western town. The ride was created by amusement park designer Bud Hurlbut, a mutual friend of Bradley and Harry Super. Beverly Park operated only in the afternoons on weekdays, opening at 2 and closing at 6. On Sundays, he extended the hours to close at 8. Integral to Beverly Park's success was Bradley's focus on the park's relationship with the neighborhood. Bradley allowed charities to hold events at the park, opening up the gates for free admission, and not policing whether the kids coming in were part of a cause or not. Bradley also kept a birthday book full of the birth dates of the frequent visitors that lived in the neighborhood. On their birthday, he would send the children a balloon and a card. The efforts paid off, and the neighborhood embraced Bradley and the park. Given its location near Beverly Hills, it constantly attracted the stars of the day, and it was believed that Bradley's ledger, in which guests would sign their names as they entered the grounds, would be worth a significant amount of money given the amount of famous autographs it contained.
Have you had lunch? The best lunch in town is only 2 minutes away.
Here?
Here. If you like hot dogs, Miss West, you're in the very heart of the Wiener Belt. 2 mile longs, huh?
Coming right up. And the whole schmear for the lady, too?
The whole schmear.
Hey, good.
Also in 1946, a group of caged animals were put up on display at the park. These included Babe the elephant, Susie, the California black bear, and Tony, the African lion. With the increasing responsibilities and required attention, Bradley lived at a house next to the park and had a machine shop near the parking lot. By 1948, Bradley had paid his debt and was profiting off of the park. Bradley's wife Bernice, who had assisted her husband with the park while also working at Walt Disney Productions, decided to work at Beverly Park full-time.
The bird. What does that tell us about the legacy of this iconic duo? Hi, I'm Ed Egg. And in 1949, Michael Maltese and Chuck Jones created the Looney Tunes cartoon Fast and Furious. No, not that one.
Family.
This one. This introduced us to Roadrunner and the Coyote, originally named Don Coyote, and was only really planned to be a one-off short, a twist to the classic cat and mouse dynamic, and something of a parody.
Remember how the Roadrunner cartoons always start with the characters zooming and then freeze framing, and they tell you what the character is and its Latin name? Well, that comes from these other live-action short subjects that were playing in movie theaters at the time. Travelogues, documentaries, this was a parody of that sort of thing.
But when the short proved to be popular, more was made and established a lot of the rules these shorts would follow. The tunnel paintings, the silent characters who would only communicate with signs or the occasional, and that the Coyote would never catch the Roadrunner. But like the laws of gravity, rules are meant to be broken, also known as crimes, which are hella cool. Uh-oh. But first, let me clarify what I mean by catch.
Sometimes I wish he'd catch him. If he caught him, there wouldn't be any more Roadrunner.
It's not just grab the bird, because you could cage it with no hands, and that would be a catch. But you could grab the bird while it continues running, it would not be a catch. So in this instance, catch means through the Coyote's direct intervention, either intentional or accidental, the Roadrunner is held captive by the Coyote, and it does not escape unless there is another intervention, such as the Coyote's invention, backfiring. Because it's not kidnapping if you don't do it right. God damn it. So pull up a pile of birdseed and let's tuck into Chuck. From 1949 to 1964, Chuck Jones made 24...
Yeah, but some people are just like, I mean, if it was all related to like how much time you put in, it wouldn't be like for these people. There's something else there. I'm not quite sure what it is. Being young and coming into the game with different expectations. I'm pretty sure no matter when Space picked up the game, it would have been by far the best in its time period. Right.
Refrigerator as the employee's lunch. At another pharmacy, compounded drugs were stored in the employee's bathroom.
It sickened me. It really did. Bothered me a lot.
Yeah. It should have sickened you, because you should not store an open box of loose pills next to a toilet. I've never been to pharmacy school, but I'm pretty sure lesson 1 is don't put the pills where you poop. So, how could that happen? Well, in the absence of FDA oversight, state pharmacy boards are supposed to send inspectors to make sure conditions are sanitary. But in many states, there is an extreme shortage of them. As of 2016, Hawaii had only 1 inspector. Kansas had 2, and Illinois had just 3, despite the fact it has nearly 2,700 pharmacies, meaning each inspector would have been tasked with 900 locations to keep an eye on. And the only way that is possible is if the inspectors are just texting each pharmacy, "You good?" And this lack of oversight can be especially dangerous if a lab is producing sterile drugs that are injected into the body. A few years back, one compounded pharmacy made national headlines after it was found to be the source of a massive meningitis outbreak.
The Food and Drug Administration is telling doctors don't use any products
from the New England Compounding Center. You know, when they went in there, they actually found fungus in a vial that you could see with the naked eye. They saw
at 306 electoral votes to Trump's 232. And during a press conference Trump held just a few hours later, he merely acknowledged reality.
Ideally, we won't go to a lockdown. I will not go. This administration will not be going to a lockdown. Hopefully, whatever happens in the future, who knows which administration it will be. I guess time will tell. But I can tell you this administration will not go to a lockdown.
Except no, time will not tell. Time has told. Trump lost this election and he knows it. And yet just an hour after that press conference, he was retweeting voter fraud conspiracies again, which is pathetic, dangerous, and in many ways an appropriate coda to a presidency that has destroyed so many lives, not only of those that he's attacked, but also of those he's claimed to protect. So many of us have lost loved ones, either because you could no longer square your love for them with their love for him, or because they fell down a mind-melting rabbit hole of conspiracy theories that he happily perpetuated, or because he let a deadly virus run wild and it fucking killed them. And now, as a parting gift to the country, Trump is somehow managing to divide us even further, while also hobbling his successor at the...
President Clinton calls her my little humidor.
Fucking God, can I just do it? Like, why am I still playing this? Why am I still... I should have been it. I got to the ending twice already. And the ending's not hard. Okay.
Confusing. Will they or won't they dance? That for
have high blood pressure, and all of
moving to break up harmful monopolies. In the early 20th century, we broke up Standard Oil, and as recently as 40 years ago, the government took action against who else but AT&T, our business daddy who left for cigarettes and never came home. What? They were actually the largest firm on the planet back then, and broadly well-respected and considered good, which is to say, completely unrecognisable from the AT&T of today. But crucially, that popularity may well have been because people had no alternatives. You had to rent your phone from AT&T, and they were in charge of both local and long-distance services, which, as we now know, were wildly overpriced. And when MCI, a much smaller company, tried to offer long-distance phone service at a lower rate, AT&T was not having it.
MCI, which charges up to 50% less than Bell, argued that AT&T tried to put it out of business by refusing to provide equipment needed for long-distance transmission. A key exhibit, AT&T's own notes of a 1972 Florida meeting by company executives in which one said, "Let's choke them off before they get started."
Now, obviously, fuck AT&T now and forever, but is that what that said? Because the only bit of squiggle that I can decode there are the words dangerous to Samantha's, a $, something that weirdly might be COVID, and then there is something that's definitely, no question, capital B, balls. The DOJ then actually filed an antitrust lawsuit, which AT&T fought vigorously for a decade, and when, in 1984, it was formally broken up by the government, AT&T's chairman warned the public that we would come to regret what had just happened.
Oh, I've had the conviction and taken the position in more than one forum that the country in the long run will be sorry. I find it difficult to believe that things will work as well in the future as they have worked in the past.
Yeah, but he was wrong. Things actually worked better because it turns out ending a monopoly is almost always a good thing, whether it's AT&T or Standard Oil or literally any game of Monopoly. We didn't know it at the time, but AT&T's dominance was
Oh my
seriously
God.
holding back innovation. But as soon as it wasn't controlling the phone lines and what
I
you could
swear,
attach
if I
to its network, many new products started proliferating. It contains the so-called energy sources and creating millions of good high-wage jobs in the United States. The whole Green New Deal is just 14 pages long. That is 7 pages shorter than the menu for the Cheesecake Factory. A menu which, by the way, should have exactly one item on it, pie. That's right, I said it, pie is the only good dessert. It's got fruit, it's got bread, it's got goo, it is a true triple threat. Fuck you, cakes! Pie forever! I do not yield any ground! But it's important to note, the Green New Deal contains no detailed specifics on how it will achieve any of its goals, which sounds like a criticism, but it is really not. The plan's backers, led by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, said repeatedly, right from the outset, that the Green New Deal was merely meant to kickstart a conversation, set some aggressive targets, so that we could then figure out how to hit them.
Our first step is to define the problem and define the scope of the solution. And so we're here to say that small, incremental policy solutions are not enough.
Right. At a certain point, your problems get so big that you have no choice but to do something drastic. Sometimes you just get in too deep. Sometimes you make a young man's mistake, like falling in love with the beautiful wife of a mafioso. He puts a price on your head, she swears she's leaving for you, but you can't do that. You can't make her live the life of a fugitive, so you fake your own death in a falafel cart collision and sail to America to start things fresh. You tell everyone there that you were a comedian in England, and despite your ridiculous cartoon accent and no one in England having ever heard of you, just to hold on to a rent-stabilised unit, because that is not exactly a welcoming message. If you went to someone's home and their welcome mat said, "There's going to be a lot of rats from now on," you would drop your casserole dish then and there and turn the fuck around, thereby instantly falling right into the rat's trap. And it is worth noting, when rent-stabilised tenants did leave that building, the asking rents, unsurprisingly, then as much as doubled. And I assume that those apartments were then snapped up by a nice young rat couple with rich taste and disposable income. I believe we have a photo? Yeah, there it is, yeah. They seem nice. And with rents being squeezed across the board and protections few and far between, lower income renters are obviously the most vulnerable here. Even before the pandemic struck, 23 million people lived in households that paid more than half their income on rent and utilities, which is just not sustainable for anyone. Now, in theory, we have something designed to combat that. Federal housing assistance in the form of housing choice vouchers, commonly known as Section 8. The idea behind them is that a household still has to pay 30% of its monthly income for rent and utilities, but the government will then help cover the rest. The problem is, this program is massively underfunded, to the point that only 1 in 4 households that qualify for assistance actually receive it. It cannot be a pleasant place to work. Just listen to what extra little gifts they get. Of IRS employees as Gestapo-like villains doesn't quite match up when you see what they're actually like. Because on the IRS YouTube channel, there are videos where employees talk about their jobs, and they don't seem evil so much as unbelievably boring.
A data transfer router takes the physical return and inputs it into the computer system for further processing.
You gotta know about the budgetary accounting, proprietary accounting.
You're out there meeting taxpayers at their residences, at their places of business. You're conducting interviews on taxpayers. You're investigating their assets. You're out there interviewing third parties, looking for assets that possibly the taxpayers didn't dispose to.
Those people aren't Nazis. Nazis are inherently interested. Those people are the physical equivalent of Ambien. And look, there is a weird kind of heroism to doing jobs that are that boring. Because not only could I not do their job, I can barely even listen to them talking about it. So why exactly do we hate the IRS so much? Because it's worth remembering. If you are angry about the amount of tax you pay, that's nothing to do with them. That's determined by a vote in Congress, much like declarations of war and how often Orrin Hatch is allowed to orgasm. Not yet, Orrin. Not yet.
But the biggest missing piece is at the bottom. We're missing like a full row and a half. What you see here right now are all the chemical elements that humans have found in nature. Just sitting around in the atmosphere as gases, in the ground in rocks, even a couple liquids. Many of them are stable. A good number of them are safe, so long as you don't eat, inhale, or drink them. A decent portion, however, are not, and are in fact quite dangerous. Radioactive samples that are firing off millions of invisible electrons that can penetrate into your bloodstream. Radium, discovered by Marie Curie, almost certainly killed her. Her daughter, Irene, very likely died from exposure to polonium, the other element discovered by her mother. So maybe you understand now why Fermi didn't mind having to sprint up and down his lab if it meant extending his lifespan by a few years. So how does one go about creating a new element? Well, on paper, it's simple. You add or remove protons. Hydrogen has 1 proton, helium 2, lithium 3. And if you keep doing this, count all the way up the periodic table, you'd eventually get to the heaviest element in the known world up to that point, element 92. You know it as uranium. Here's the other part of the picture. An element is determined entirely by its proton number, but the number of neutrons can vary. That neutron number makes certain elements more stable than others. Carbon-12, with 6 protons and 6 neutrons, is extremely stable. It will stay in that form untouched for billions of years. Carbon-14, with 6 protons and 8 neutrons, is radioactive. It's got an energy imbalance that it wants to rectify, and at random it will convert one of its extra neutrons into a proton and fire off a dangerous electron to account for that energy imbalance. We call this beta minus decay, and what you're left with is an element with 1 extra proton. That's 7, aka nitrogen. Look at that! Purely by having 1 too many neutrons, the carbon destabilized and transformed into an entirely different element. Fermi's idea was to go to the furthest edge of the periodic table, uranium, element 92, and fire neutrons at it to try and artificially induce beta decay. If it worked, you'd be upgrading element 92 into 93, and if you could do it twice in a row, possibly even 94. Here's a fun problem though. How do you even know if you've created a new element? After all, you don't know what it looks like or what its chemical properties are. In this case, Fermi and his team had to rule things out by verifying which elements they hadn't created. They compared their result with the chemistry of all known elements down to lead, element 82, and couldn't find a single match. Unstable elements often lead to something called an alpha decay chain. That's when a nucleus spits out 2 protons and 2 neutrons. It leads to a leapfrog effect, where element 94 turns into element 92, then 90, 88, and so on, until they reach a stable element, which is often lead. The other
neighbor is or was arguably one of the main but clearly I was doing it the wrong way. Even worse, I found this room with a giant magnet. It's in this hidden room up here, and the moment you enter, anything that you're holding which is metal sticks to it, including the fucking crowbar. So then I had to figure out a way to turn it off so I can get my crowbar back and also get this green key that's stuck to it. This puzzle drove me absolutely insane because I honestly didn't want to have to use another guide again. I wanted to figure things out for myself. So I went downstairs to turn the power off, thinking that might work, and no, it doesn't. Was it powered by these generators that I found around the house? Well, I turned all of those off, and no, yet again, nothing. So after about 30 minutes running around the whole house, I did it again. I looked it up, and oh, it turns out you have to make it onto the roof by stopping this train at a specific point, then jump on this pipe, then jump on the train to eventually get to the roof and throw something into this hole full of gears. Now, how on earth was I supposed to figure that out by myself? I'm sure there was another way, but I just couldn't find it. Look, puzzles are fun to complete. The achievement is like no other, but there has to be some sense to it. The magnet, for example, could have had a wire that leads to the power source. Something subtle yet noticeable. That genuinely could have been enough to figure out where it leads to go, instead of having to run about scratching your head, pressing all these different buttons. The challenge with the magnet was trying to figure out not only where the power source was, and it's ready to go, you would then push it to live, would be jumping into for the first time. It got to a point where you could play an essentially outdated live version or a more up-to-date test version. It was so bad that even the devs weren't sure whether to host events on live or the PTU. Speaking about updates and new features, their roadmap is a whole other beast in this story. Something we don't need to go into too much detail about, but from launch in July, it was already quite ambitious. Although they did have a fair chunk of it done already, progress on this roadmap would only be pushed back back further and further, with the latest update in November still lacking in progress. By the end of the year, the game was already struggling in player count, with only loyal fans sticking by, others giving it a break until more progress was made, and probably most jumping to a new game entirely. But fast forward 9 months later, and things wouldn't get any better. A lot of updates were still being held in this PTU, which was annoying because a lot of the content there was arguably ready to be released. But that would all change on the 26th of April 2022, because the community was met with a rather strange post on the official forum, which came with both good news and pretty bad news. Hello all Starbase players, old and new. Today we announce a large update that we plan to release in the next week or so. We are pushing out a good deal of features, in-world changes, as well as economy and balancing changes. These are features and changes that we had originally planned to add to the live server later together with the Station Siege. Now this would be called the merge by some. The merge between PTU and live, which is great. A lot of people have been waiting on months to play the new content on live, but it's clear that for some reason they were just waiting until they could actually finish the Station Siege to do any of this. However, the reason to figure out what to actually do with this channel.
Come on. What?
No! The drone's supposed to be out of sight!
Okay, that was never a thing, by the way.
Hey, come help me solve this equation!
No, fuck off. Where is the drone then? Is it in there? Maybe it's in that room. Yeah, I think it's in that room. No, the drone isn't in here. What the fuck? Okay, it just spawned into the room. Of course. It just spawned into the fucking room. Of course. Right, come on. And then call it there. And then I'll hit these two. There's two switches up there, right? I have no fucking idea how to get to them. Okay, I got that one. Okay, that wasn't as hard as I thought actually. Right, it's probably gonna go blue soon, so I'm just gonna get ready to run. Yep, that one. Yep. Right, stay there, shut that door, get that, don't record the drone. Let me good. We should be good. Should be good. I feel like I'm doing a Call of Duty Easter egg now. That's it. Yeah, we're good. We're good. Fuck off. We're good. Alright, is it this key card here? Oh, I think that's it. Has that done it? Okay. When the lights come on, everyone...
It's either dimensional breaking or freaking Ferrum Dome. A million demons downloaded. And none of them are Gustavo Fring. I got 7. I got 9. I got 11. We're just like started off on 7 and now it's a 2% progress kind of day apparently. Did I get 12? When the heck did I get 12? What? I'm going crazy. I must have like died and immediately looked in chat because I didn't even think I got far. I mean I didn't because it was only 12. There we go. I knew it. 18. Is this extreme? No, it's an insane demon. If people ask me what I'm playing is extreme, I never say yes because like what? If you think this is not extreme, then I don't know what to say. Well, I got Hydro on a 10-minute cooldown, so it can't be used every 5 seconds. Or hating water. How am I hating water? Every 10 minutes is fine. That's a good hydration. I need to drink water every 15 attempts. 21? Call me Pro gaming, Zeronium. I used to hate water though. It's true that I was a water hater, but I feel like a lot of kids are water haters because kids are fucking dumb. Drink water, you dumb ass. There's more to life than a Coca-Cola. Water's so good. Me when I love water. Growing up is realizing water is good. Yeah, basically. Dude, okay, but finding out like that like iron in like food is like actual iron when I was a kid was like the craziest discovery. I'm like, no way, I'm eating iron like from Minecraft, but that's not edible. You use pickaxe. That's how you make pickaxes, bro. What's that about? 25! Random Gustavo Fring progress jump scare. How's this all, by the way? Because you want to do the whole trilogy? Oh my lord. It feels very inconsistent, but it doesn't seem like the worst thing I've ever played, that's for sure. I died at first.
God, are you kidding me? I'm not even gonna, that is just showing me that was an intrusive thought. I can't beat this level, by the way. That was just a sign that was an intrusive and unhelpful thought. Sorry, world, I got to 98% and you trolled me too hard. First place feature. I've been wanting to say that for 8 years. It's crazy. I've looked up to the first place spot on the featured list for 8 years, and I finally have it in my own name. With a demon level. It's a demon, damn it! Like, it's just so cool to me. Thank you so much for the people that supported the series and kept it going. The level probably wouldn't even exist without the people supporting the channel. Dude, I love it. Thank you so much for watching this little backstory video. I hope it was at least a little bit entertaining. I kind of just made it all me, but I just wanted to talk a little bit because I really love what's just happened. Check the links in the description. Leave a like and subscribe, and have a good day.
This level, an unfortunate set of events happened. This level was, I'm not even like, originally I wasn't supposed to be able to stream this because the second half of the level was supposed to be a secret and then it got leaked because of Paradox team drama. So now I'm here. It's called Hyper Beam, but it's actually called No Jokes. It uses the song called Best Drop of All Time because it basically has a goofy drop when it sounds serious. It's by the Paradox team, which means it's my second Paradox team verification. This time, I won't drop it. I promise. We'll see. There's no difficulty standard this time. That's what made me drop Frozen Caves, so we'll see. This level's only 39 seconds also, so it has a pretty difficult gameplay. Who knows if it'll get rated. I don't really care. I think it's funny enough. I'll verify it. So I used my up arrow at the last...
Nodding off. And as the minutes gives the bowel time to reabsorb water to form a proper stool. But if someone doesn't have loose stools and has morphine in their body, then that slowed down gut would reabsorb too much water from the stools and harden them, leading to chronic constipation, which BW had. In the lungs, morphine interacts with the bronchioles and that suppresses cough. So that's why codeine is in cough syrup. But this isn't the reason why BW stopped breathing this time. He stopped breathing because morphine also interacts with the brain. When morphine is bound into nerves that sense pain, it blocks that pain signal. That's why it's a pain reliever. Actually, we haven't really found a better medication class for pain than opioids. But when enough morphine binds into other parts of the brain, it releases chemicals to deliver a rush of euphoria, which is why when it's paired with other things that prevent the breakdown of those feel-good chemicals, that euphoria is amplified. And morphine binds into the brainstem, which controls breathing. When oxygen is low in the blood, your brainstem will tell the body to try to breathe deeper and quicker to replace it. But BW's brainstem can't tell the body to do this anymore because the codeine in his cough syrup was turned into morphine. They clump together and they cause a blockade, meaning that the medulla doesn't get any oxygen at all. No salt is pumped back into the medulla. As water keeps flowing in, the medulla becomes less salty. When it's less salty, less water flows into it, so then water doesn't get reabsorbed, and everything becomes urine, causing KG to lose a lot of water.
Individuals who have sickle cell disease or sickle cell trait, because of the sickling, the medulla will be damaged, and its ability to be salty will be compromised. Because of that, eventually the kidneys will not be able to concentrate urine enough.
Losing water means that KG's blood is thicker than normal. Think of it like this molasses. It's harder for blood to flow, causing his overworked muscles to become starved of oxygen as they make more lactic acid as he keeps squatting. This acid causes more of KG's red blood cells to sickle, worsening this entire cycle. If his problems are coming from losing water, then replacing that water is the first step in treating him. IV fluids are immediately started. This will help push more water through his kidneys and help minimize some of the permanent kidney damage. KG is conscious again. He complains to the doctors of sharp muscle aches. Anyone who squats 500 reps is going to hit that every hour on the hour. MB would have a stomach movement come up out of his mouth. They notice that MB stopped urinating. He seems bloated. His face and his belly are swollen as if he's retaining fluid that should be urine. A blood test finds that MB has anemia, and meaning without anemia, meaning the presence of blood. Something called hemoglobin was low in his blood, which is the protein that carries oxygen throughout the body. Without oxygen going to vital parts like the brain, bad things can start to happen. But examining his red urine, they find out that what's making it red is huge amounts of hemoglobin. Clearly, something is happening to his liver if he appears jaundiced. And if he had hemoglobinuria before he completely stopped making urine altogether, then it means that something happened to his kidneys too. But why? MB inhaled what should have been hydrogen gas. Typically, you don't get sick like this just by breathing that in, but everything started to go wrong after that particular moment. If he inhaled something, then why are bad things happening to his liver and his kidneys, but not his lungs? In the lungs, the oxygen from the air is exchanged for carbon dioxide from the blood. If inhaled gas from the lungs goes directly into the blood, and MB noticed blood in his urine before he presented to the emergency room, then it means that gas may have done something to his blood. That bad blood could have flown into his kidneys and become his urine, and this gives the medical team. A fresh Atlantic salmon is measured to be 0.022 parts per million, or 0.022 micrograms of mercury per gram of fish. Then to get to 1,440 milligrams of mercury means that you would need to eat 65,000 kilograms, or 144,000 pounds of salmon in one sitting to reach KW's exposure. Not only are the number of days physiologically consistent with KW's recollection of exposure, but the amount was too. The density of dimethylmercury is about 3 grams per milliliter at room temperature, and the 1.44 grams of mercury exposure comes out to be about half a milliliter of liquid. Because it's 3 times more dense than water and comes in a 95% solution, about 2 to 3 drops contain the dosage that the professor came into contact with and gave us this outcome. It was found after the fact that dimethylmercury does in fact diffuse through the type of gloves KW wore that day, and it does so within seconds. The small exposure, equivalent to a few drops, absorbed into her skin, embedded into her body, and caused delayed onset cerebral disease. It's difficult for people sometimes to realize the extent of injury that can present with what seems like trivial exposure. Even in KW's case, gloves get sweaty, so she may not have even felt any liquid that spilled onto the outside of the glove on her hand. The concept of a delayed onset of disease several weeks to months after initial exposure is not uncommon. You've experienced it yourself. Infectious diseases famously have an incubation period that can range from a few hours to nearly a year before manifesting clinical symptoms. It happens every year when there's a new flu floating around, but can be extreme during the bubonic plague in Europe, where transmission can occur through touch and manifest itself within hours. Today, in China and Iran, farmers were unknowingly exposed to super warfarins used as rat poison. Warfarin is a drug that's commonly used today in patients who are at risk for stroke. Psychosis and delusional disorder. Looking at her cells from her intestines under a microscope revealed marked villus blunting and atrophy. Increased presence of white blood cells in the surface were found indicating inflammation and giving strong evidence of celiac disease. This means that she developed gluten sensitivity sometime in her midlife, became delusional and was misdiagnosed, didn't get the care that she needed in the psychiatric hospital, and was led to internet disinformation, leading her to drink a liter of soy sauce as a supposed colon cleanse, demyelinating parts of her brain and causing her to become quadriplegic. Clinically relevant gluten sensitivity doesn't happen to everyone. Celiac disease can develop at any age, and some people are genetically predisposed to it. This isn't to incite dietary fears in anyone. Celiac disease is a diagnosis that involves serologic testing, endoscopy, and biopsy. It's not a diagnosis after reading an online food blog. And unfortunately for CG, she was sold on a sham claim of a soy sauce colon cleanse. We can actually take soy sauce out of that phrase. And A's referring to enzyme. High fat degrading anemia, meaning presence in blood. High sugar presence in blood. If E.T.'s heart rate is high, his heart rhythm is erratic, if he's shaking and he just had a seizure, then you could reasonably guess that maybe he's hopped up on a chemical stimulant. His hyperglycemia was from the stimulant triggering a chemical message to the body that it's time to fight or flight, cueing the body to immediately mobilize glucose stores from his body in an effort to supply cells and muscle with energy in order to perform that fight or flight. E.T. appears to be experiencing sympathomimetic toxidrome. Toxidrome, a combination of the word syndrome, referring to a group of symptoms happening simultaneously, and a toxin being a poison. Sympatho referring to the sympathetic nervous system, the one responsible for the fight or flight response as opposed to rest and digest, and mimetic meaning an imitation of. E.T. has symptoms happening together that's imitating a response that would be elicited by a natural function of one part of the nervous system caused by a massive ingestion of a toxin unknown to E.T. and the medical team but known to us as 35,000 milligrams of caffeine, almost 90 times the daily recommended limit. As the medical team reads the results of E.T.'s blood tests, they find that he has hypokalemia. Hypo meaning low. Kali referring to potassium, or more formally kalium, as shown by its symbol on the periodic table of elements. Low potassium presence in blood, but